It's time for us to check back in with the family history and stories of Opal, Corn, Myers. If you missed any of the previous readings, just look in the description below for a playlist. You can also find information in the description of where to purchase this wonderful, wonderful book. Not much sleep for me. I don't see how I ever made it that first year. Guess there's a lot to be said for being young. Every night I stayed up until 11, and sometimes longer than that, working on the lessons for all of the grades, 1st through 8th, for the next day, so my students would have something to read and assignments ready for them to do. School started at 8 o'clock and turned out at 4. I always got up at 3 in the morning, and I usually got to the school by 7:30. A lot of mornings I had to walk in the dark, and many times it would be dark or getting dark by the time I got home. After school, I stayed there to see that everything was clean and to do whatever needed to be done. Of course, the students had certain chores that they took turns doing too. Then I had to come back home and take care of my chores and help cook. I usually baked the bread for supper. My main chore was milking the cows, and I helped with whatever else needed to be done. Every day I walked a total of 5 miles to and from school with my book satchel, supplies, lunch, and assignments in a white sack. Everyone made fun of me the way I'd tote everything on my back in that old white sack. They called me Traveling Toe, just like they had called Uncle Lewis. Bathrooms. The school didn't have any real bathrooms, not even outhouses, and that was a big problem. At first I didn't know how I was going to manage it. The first day of school, after I had taken roll, I had all the students go outside and stand at the bottom of the steps with the girls on the right and the boys on the left. I stood at the top of the steps and gave them the rules for using the bathroom. Now boys, you can take the left-hand side. You see the rags I've tied around those trees over there? That's where you'll go, in that area beyond those trees. And don't you let me catch you to the right of that last tree I've marked right there. And I gave the same instructions to the girls and told them to stay on the right-hand side. I had marked off an area in each direction where the boys and girls could walk down behind the hill to be out of sight. They used leaves to wipe with. Those woods had a lot of good leaves. Even in the winter, you could find something to wipe with. But in the winter, I also had a Sears catalog that they could pull a couple of pages out of on the way to the woods. With that many students, the bathroom area couldn't be small. There was plenty of land around the school, and they had the whole woods out there in the direction I'd marked off for them to use. But they still had to watch where they stepped. Those marked off portions were only for that purpose, and the students were never allowed to go into them to play or for any other reason. At first I thought that those big boys might be hateful or try to bother the girls, so I always had the girls go out in pairs to be sure they were safe. But the boys were good about it, and no one else bothered them either. Later, when I taught at Rose School, the side windows of the school faced the direction of the girls' bathroom area. Everyone could see the girls go off into the trees and thought it was the funniest thing ever when one of the girls came back out to pull some leaves off a tree and then disappear again back into their area. Those boys would just giggle and snicker at that. I'd tell them, my land, you know everybody has to do that. There's nothing funny about it. It just makes sense to use the leaves. After all, it's better than not having anything to use. I guess the boys did the same thing when they went out, but they still always joked about the girls. People from town would laugh when I'd tell them we didn't have bathrooms or even outhouses at the schools up here. I don't know if they didn't believe me or were just embarrassed by the subject. Chores. I made up a list of the chores that needed to be done and then assigned students to certain jobs. Getting water from the spring, which was a good ways off, presented a bit of a problem, but the older boys were strong and could easily carry a bucket full of water that far. With so many children, they would have to get water 2 or 3 times a day. We only had 1 bucket and 1 dipper that everyone used. Cutting wood was another job for the older boys. The younger children would go out into the woods and find downed wood and tote it back for the older ones to cut up and stack. Some of the men in the community would bring in logs for us to use for firewood too. Sometimes they would even split and stack it for us. Other times the boys would have to split the logs. The older and more advanced students would be assigned to grade papers and work with the young or slower students. This really helped me a lot. Of course, they all helped me by doing the other chores like sweeping the floors, cleaning the blackboard, passing out papers and supplies, cleaning windows, ringing the bell, and just anything else I could think of that needed to be done. If we didn't share the work, I would have to do it all, and I usually didn't have time to do even one more thing. The children were eager and real good to help. I never did have any problems with any of them except my sister's girl. Her daddy wouldn't let her sweep. That was the only one I ever had in all the years I taught that wouldn't work in the schoolhouse. Teaching class and P.C. Williams. At school we always had memory Bible verses. In the morning the first thing was our devotional, and then we would memorize scripture verses. At dinner time we would say the 23rd Psalm, and after the recesses we would recite the states and their capitals. It wasn't too long after school started that I got a Bible teacher to come around once a month. Of course, not many of the one-room teachers cared much one way or the other about having Bible teachers at their school, and simply wouldn't have invited them to come, you know. But I was always glad to have them come to my school. After our scripture memorization, I'd start working with the individual grades. I'd usually start out by calling my first graders up to the station benches because they didn't need extra time in the morning to study. When I got done with them, the second grade would have all their books and assignments ready to come to the front. We didn't have any problems with study periods. The students would study and do their homework while the other grades took turns at the front with me. I would have the better students helping the younger ones, and that worked out real good. One day, while I was teaching 6th grade English, not quite a month after school started, I looked up and glanced out the window. I saw a man coming right out from where the girls went to the bathroom. I thought he might be trying to harm the girls, hit them with rocks or something like that, which had me scared. The thought never crossed my mind that he might be trying to molest my girls. You just didn't hear of things like that. We didn't even know what perverted sex was. Of course, I heard plenty about it a little later. I calmly told the children, "There's somebody outside. You stay right here at your desk, look at your books, and don't pay any attention to him when he comes in. Don't even look up." I went on with what we were doing as best I could. I waited, and finally the man came up towards the schoolhouse. He came up on the porch and just looked around. I didn't know what to think of him, and it scared me when he finally did come on in to the schoolhouse. He slipped on in and sat down beside someone in the back, just like he belonged there. Now I was really starting to get scared, and then I saw him take a little black book out and start writing. I thought, Lord of mercy, that's one of the officials checking on what I'm doing. He was writing down notes. I didn't have any idea of what I was doing wrong, but then I didn't know what I was doing right either. And directly he walked up to the front and said, "I'm P.C. Williams, the superintendent of Cocke County Schools." I thought, Lord me alive, I didn't even know he was a man. I knew the superintendent's name was P.C. Williams, but I'd thought P.C. might just as easily be a woman. When I went down there to pick up my supplies before school started, I only saw one person. He said, "I was just checking the window panes. You've got 13 or 14 out. You can pick them up in town when you come to the faculty meeting. We'll provide the glass, but you'll have to see to it that they get put in." The students and everyone else who heard about it laughed at me about that man scaring me so. It scared me so badly that I didn't even think to ask about desks or books from the students. Of course, we were getting in a lot of books by that time. But after that, you can be sure that they have heard plenty from me at every monthly meeting about not having enough desks and not having an outhouse. Potty platform. Not too long after P.C. Williams's visit to my school, there was this woman, Ruth Webb Odell was her name, and she was running for superintendent. She's the one who wrote Over the Misty Blue Hills, the story of Cocke County, Tennessee, and served as a state house representative from 1937 to 1941. Everybody called her Lady Ruth. Well, we have never had a woman run for superintendent before. I liked her from the start. I heard one of her campaign speeches, and she talked about how one of the things she was going to do was build toilets for the schools. All the men really acted stupid about having a woman in the running and heckled her when she talked. Don't you just know if we elect a woman superintendent, all she'll think about is building pretty toilets on the sides of all these mountains. She'll probably even want to plant flower beds around them so they'll smell better. They made it sound like it was just something awful that one of the planks in her platform was to build toilets for the rural schools. I defended her, saying, well, there are a lot of planks in your candidate's platform that need mending. I'm teaching at Davis School, and we don't have any bathrooms, not even an outhouse. At every recess time, I turn out 62 students to go squat around in the woods and wipe with leaves, and you just know that can't be very sanitary. I have to allow more time for recess because with that many children, you know they don't all want to go at the same time right next to each other. I'm sure you enjoy your privacy. My students would like a little privacy too. Everybody thought it was awful that I would say things like that, but I'll tell you what, if they'd come to visit my school, I would have taken them for a little walk in the woods and they would have known what it was like. I thought her wanting to build toilets was a splendid idea. If I had been able to, I would have voted a dozen times because I knew firsthand what an important improvement that would be. But her opponent and the men who supported him said that toilets were not a part of education. Well, it most certainly was education. It was teaching the students health rules, teaching them to be clean, that they could have then taught to their families. Combining the 7th and 8th grades. My going to the faculty meetings every month was going to be hard on my parents. They wouldn't let me walk by myself, especially at 3 in the morning. They wouldn't even let Ben walk me into town. The morning I got my first check, Papa and I had to walk all the way into Newport. The train didn't come early enough to get me to my meeting on time, and if you missed the meeting, you missed your check. Well, I had already walked 100 miles to and from the schoolhouse, and to get that check, a few more miles wouldn't make that much difference. After the meeting, I paid 25 cents to take a shared taxi back to where you turn there on Highway 107 in Del Rio. Papa was there to meet me and walk me home. Can you just imagine all that work and walking for $50 a month? At the faculty meeting, besides bringing up the problems of not having enough desks and not having outhouses, I had a question about how my students starting Newport High School next year would be transported to the bus stop in Del Rio. My sister, who's in the 8th grade at Sand Hill School, said that the county provided a driver to pick up the children who'd finished her school. The driver picks them up close to their homes and drives them into Del Rio to catch the Newport High School bus. She's been told that next year the county will do the same for her and the others going to the high school. I haven't heard anything official about this. Are you planning to do the same for my students? No one from Davis had gone on to high school for years, and I wanted to be sure that my students would be able to go on with their schooling. When I was away at Highland, I know that 2 or 3 of Dr. Turner's young'uns would walk across the mountain every morning carrying a lantern to light their way. They had to walk to the railroad tracks to Bridgeport to get a ride to the high school. The officials told me we would have to have at least 5 students going into the 9th grade before the county would pay someone to pick them up. Well, now, of course, I wasn't about to tell them I only had 3 in the 8th grade. I had to think up some way to get those kids to high school. I thought about all that on the way home and came up with the idea of moving 6 of my other students into the 8th grade. I was sure that they would be able to do that. There were other students who could be moved a grade or 2 higher also. Many of them were already older than they should be for the grade they were in. It would mean a lot of work, but I thought my students could do it, and I was determined to make that happen. Of course, I never did tell anyone at the county office. After all, they really didn't need to know. I couldn't see where there was anything wrong with what I was planning. If the students were prepared and able to move up a grade or 2, it would benefit them to do so. For sure, when you have a 21 and a 16-year-old in the 7th and 8th grades, you know that's certainly not a good thing. I tutored those 6 students until I was sure that they would be ready for high school, so my first year I had 9 students who finished the 8th grade. The county said we had to have at least 5 students, but we had even more. Then when it was time for school to start the next year, all those students except the 21-year-old went on to high school and did just as well as anybody else. Thanksgiving, 1933. After my last faculty meeting before Thanksgiving, I ordered and paid for the tin for Mama and Papa's new roof. Papa took the wagon into Del Rio and picked up the tin from the train station. Meanwhile, Ben and I went out in the woods looking for tall trees that were about 4 inches across and cut them to replace the rafters that were not solid. A week or so before that, Papa had cut down a big tree and taken it up to the sawmill to be cut into planks for the roof. While we were off in the woods looking for trees to cut, Ben asked me playfully, "Don't you think we should get married?" "Under one condition," I snapped. "What's that?" "If you'll promise me you won't buy me a ring." "I won't accept a ring, and that's all there is to it. I've heard so many things and read stories about how a girl would get the ring and then later the boy would want it back. I don't intend to be given anything back, and I won't have to if I don't go taking anything to start with." I didn't really take his proposal seriously. I had just answered him as a pure joke, you know. But I was serious about not accepting a ring. I had already vowed years before that I wouldn't because of Andrew Click want me to give his ring back to him to give another girl. I wasn't going to be hurt like that again. I made sure that everything was ready to start working on the roof, and as soon as my Thanksgiving vacation started, the first thing we had to do was take off the old roof. We put the rotten wood in the woodpile with the other firewood, and the good wood we put in the shed by the barn. We would use that later for repairs on the outbuildings. We replaced all the bad supports with the trees Ben and I had cut and put the freshly cut planks across them, and then the tin went on top of that. At 10 o'clock Thanksgiving night, we finished the new tin roof on that kitchen by lantern light, a new roof that wouldn't leak. We were so proud of that. We never did have enough money to finish putting a ceiling in the house, but with the new roof, we never did notice it being as cold. Wonderful that they got the roof built, or got it repaired. I guess it was already built. I wrote down a few things I wanted to talk to you about, but there was one while I was reading. I come up with another one. Now I probably can't remember what it was or where to find it. Okay, I didn't find it, but I did remember it. It was directly, the use of that word. There was 2 or 3 things in the language this time that jumped out at me, so directly was one of them. You might have heard someone in your family say that. I've heard that my whole life. Often I've heard it different ways. Some older people would say directly, and other people say it more like directly. And it just means soon. It depends on the person saying it, how long they might mean. Somebody might say directly, "I'm going to go to town, do you need anything?" Or "I'm going to get on those apples directly after I rest a spell," or something like that. So it just means a period of time, but usually pretty quickly, pretty soon. So I really loved that. Another one that I loved was at the very beginning when she's talking about now she's teaching, she's at the school, and she talks about starting out telling about the school day, and it starts, at 8 o'clock, and then she says it turns out at 4. I don't hardly hear anybody say that, but we would say that. I mean, my growing up years, it was like school turned out at 3 o'clock, you know. Church just turned out at the big Baptist church there in town, so there's going to be a lot of traffic, something like that. So that was really common, even in my growing up years. I don't hear as many people saying it today to say it's if you think about it, it's really literal. It's like the people of the building turned out. They went outside, they left. Of course, today most people just say school gets out at whatever time, or church let out, you know, early today. They's all out of there by 12 o'clock or something, but turned out. I really loved that one. And then the other one, language one, we'll go ahead and talk about it, was there at the end. She says it was, when Ben, you know, asked her, it says, don't you think we should get married? And she snaps at him and says that she don't want a ring. That's the only way she'd marry him. And really it's because she's heard about the click boy, you know, giving her the ring and then taking it, writing her when she was at school and saying, would you send it back to me because I want to give it to somebody else. So she was still letting that hang on and hurt her feelings, and so she didn't want to be hurt again by Ben. But anyway, she says that when she didn't really take him serious, and she just said that for a pure joke, she says. So pure, we would say that. Sometimes pure D is another way you'll hear people say it, but it was, he's pure mean, he's pure mean, or that was a pure joke, just like she did. So many ways, and it's just a different examples to use it, I mean, but it's just a way of putting emphasis on whatever it is. It's pure hot outside, it's pure cold outside, you know, all those, anything you can think of like that. It's just like an adjective to really emphasize how strong it was, or how really intense it was. So I love both of those, and all three of those, and they jumped out at me. Now the bathroom situation, wasn't that, can't imagine not even having an outhouse. And you kind of wonder, like, couldn't somebody have just built one? Somebody, you know, because they knew how. Why didn't somebody just build one? Well, if you remember from our reading, if you were one of the people that listened to the Alex Stewart book, there was just people that just didn't think about outhouses. That was just a way of life for them to go to the bathrooms in the woods, go to the bathroom outside the house, wherever it was at. So maybe they just, some people just didn't care. Maybe at home they didn't have an outhouse, so why would they put an outhouse at the school? Maybe other people thought, oh, it's just a bunch of kids, let them, you know, they'll figure it out, let them do whatever they're doing, it's just a bunch of kids, and we don't need to worry about putting in that effort. Of course, everyone in those days was busy, just like Opal. I can't believe Opal didn't try to build her own outhouse, but my goodness, when you think about it, like she said, 60 kids, and them, even if it was just split evenly, probably wasn't, but if it was, so you've got 30 girls and 30 boys, and they go to the bathroom every day in the same place. She's right, that would not be very sanitary, and it would not be a very nice place to be walking around, I'm sure. It's just hard for us to understand because of the way things are today. And it's, for me, it's hard to kind of say, well, why didn't somebody just build an outhouse? Why couldn't you just build 2 outhouses and be done with it? But Opal must not have felt like that was her place, or she didn't have time, because she's so determined to get everything else done. But again, it was just such a different time. There was lots of people that lived at houses at their very home that didn't have outhouses, that they just used the bathroom. Now, Alex Stewart, those part when he talks about it, about the certain area up there, it's just hard to read. It's so bad, and it does, the unsanitary conditions get people sick, and it's just really, really difficult part of that book of him talking about it. And it's almost like you can't hardly believe it, but there he's documenting it, and then here Opal's documenting it too, and you know, not maybe right up close together, but in the same state though, but still in different areas, but how that was just it. You just went to the bathroom out in the woods. But she was at least going to say, you got to stay in this area. You got to stay in this area, girls, and this area, boys, so that at least it would, it wasn't sanitary, but at least you could mark off those areas, and then you wouldn't go there for anything else except to use the bathroom. Now, sounds like she gives us a little hint in this one. She says when she's at the Rose School, I think that was the name of it, she talks about it the same thing, the girl coming out and getting the leaves and the boys laughing at her. So this wasn't Opal's last experience with having to deal with a school with no outhouses. I liked how all the students pitched in to help her, from sweeping to doing the blackboards to going, the bigger boys going and getting the water. It makes you wish you could go back and buy her another bucket of water just for the water, don't it? But I love how they all pitched in. And I'm sure some schools today maybe let kids do that within the classroom setting, maybe within their classroom they might get to it's not erasers and chalk today, it's like whiteboards, but maybe they get to wipe that off, maybe they get to wipe down the desk or something like that. Maybe they still let them do things like that. When I was in school, it was a thing when you got to be in 8th grade, you could do little jobs in the afternoon like that. Some people got to go to the lunchroom and work in the lunchroom and just help out, and it was like kind of cleaning up at the end of the day. Some people got to I don't really remember. It seems like some people actually helped the janitor and do some stuff like that. But one person got to work in the office. Of course, that was like the coveted job. It was always a girl. And when I was in 8th grade, it was me, so I got to work in the office. And there's some stuff that I learned in there that I still remember till today. Now, I just did just whatever they needed me to do. Maybe it was straightening up or sweeping or something like that. But they had took in a lot of change, as you might guess, from kids. So I rolled change. That was one of my jobs. I would roll the change every day. So just different little things like that. But it made you feel so important and so grown up and really give you a good sense of self-worth, Now, when my daddy was in school, at that same school, but many, many, many years prior to me, and the school's no longer there now, it burnt down. But he told me that he worked in the lunchroom. He helped, and I'm not sure exactly what he did, but what he did, like when I was doing it, it was just a way to kind of instill a work ethic in the students and give the ones that were maybe, not bragging about myself, but maybe the ones that could be trustworthy and good, give them a little bit of extra responsibility to help build character. It was all those things, and to help because they needed a little extra help. But in Pap's day, he did that. He worked in the lunchroom, and that paid for his lunch. It paid for it. He said it was $10 a day, and that paid for that. It would pay for him to eat breakfast and lunch at school, and so that's why he worked in there. And he didn't mind it. He was a worker anyway, but. Interesting. Like I said, I'm not sure that any schools do anything like that today. Now, when Katie and Corey was in school, which has again been a long time even for them, at Martins Creek, they had a wonderful teacher, Mr. Sellers, and when they were in his class, he wanted to teach the kids about responsibility and work ethic and all that, so he gave them all jobs. I mean, some of it might have been like, cleaning up or something like that. One of them I remember was like somebody had to carry all the gym shoes to the gym. They had to carry them with them. Just different things like that. And then he had not real money, but like a payment scale. It was really complicated, but it was amazing how serious those kids took those jobs and how they really, then you could like try to, maybe you got down at maybe you were carrying the stinky gym shoes and you wanted to do a better job. Well, if you did really good, then you could kind of try to get each other's jobs and stuff. Anyway, it was really fascinating how he did it. And it taught the kids a lot about working and about payment for a job well done, those kind of things. Really inspiring though, and I wonder if it's because of Opal, because she was just such a good teacher and maybe such a good role model, that all the students, she says there was no problem with them studying. They just studied when they were supposed to, so that's really, really encouraging. Kind of funny when she talks about P.C. Williams, the superintendent, coming and she sees him outside and she's afraid, she don't know what he's doing, and it turns out he's just the superintendent. But that's kind of funny because especially her telling the kids, now he's going to come in here and you look down and don't you look up no matter what happens. And you can see why they teased her about it. It's interesting though that she wasn't afraid, like it never entered her mind that he might try to kidnap a girl or something like that. She says she thought he might try to throw rocks at them. See, that don't even make sense to us today. If we seen a strange man around the school, we'd be afraid that maybe if we were scared of him, hopefully we would recognize if he was a superintendent, but if not, we'd be scared that he might try to kidnap somebody, But like she's saying, that just never even entered her mind. So her mind first went to he might try to throw rocks at them and hurt them. Just such a different time. Then the other lady runs for superintendent, but she doesn't, Lady Ruth, but she doesn't get elected. But then the men all say toilets are not part of education. And I'm like Opal. they are, especially in that day and time, so many ways because of the sanitary issues that, they could have taught the students, and they could have took it home to their families and taught them, and maybe prevented some of those horrible illnesses that Alex Stewart talked about. But also, if you just want to facilitate education, then you need a smooth bathroom experience for the students that are there, and for the teacher not to have to worry about it. But that would have helped, I think, education a lot. And then amazing, and she talks about she's got to walk to those faculty meetings, and it's going to be a hardship on her pa and mother and daddy, and because they're not going to let her go by herself, which is, again, so admirable that they want to protect Opal. But she talks about how far she's walked. She said, I've already walked 100 miles back and forth to school, so what difference does a few more make? Again, that was just such a different time in those days that people didn't think anything about walking. Like today, we might be like, some people are like, well, I'm going to really get in shape, and I'm working out, and I'm doing strength training and all that because I'm going to run a marathon, or even I'm going to walk a marathon. I'm going to walk it, but I've got to build up to that. When those days, if they wanted to go somewhere, they just started out going, and it didn't matter if it was 17, 18, 20 miles. Like she's saying, they had to leave at 3 in the morning. She just had to get up early and start walking, start hoofing it, going by Shank's mare, if you've heard that old saying. So that's really amazing to think about, that she just did it, because that's how else would she get there? She didn't have no other choice but to walk. And then the very end was really encouraging. Well, two things about the end I really liked was that she figured out she wanted those kids to go to high school. And then she finds out you got to have at least 5 students. So she goes back and works really, really hard with several of the students, and she comes up with 9 students who could go to high school. She just wants, you can just see and read and hear in her voice that the desire she has for those students to be able to excel and be educated and better themselves. And she knows if they better themselves, that's going to better their families. So that's just so heartwarming. And then the other heartwarming thing is her and Ben fixed the roof. They fixed the roof. I wish that she could have had a ceiling and had it insulated and all that. Of course, that would have been even better. But I love kind of the make do and satisfied way that she looks at that. Like she's satisfied that they just stopped the rain. That's good enough. That's enough. We never had a ceiling. Even after that, they never put a ceiling in it, but that's good enough. At least it didn't rain in the kitchen anymore. It didn't leak in the kitchen to the point where you had to sit under the kitchen table or eat in the bedroom because of the dripping rain. So I love that, and I'm glad that her and Ben got all that work done too. It's really a happy part to end on, because that was one of her goals. That's what she said once she started teaching. So she's managed to do that this first year. That's really heartwarming, really by Thanksgiving. So that's really great. So a high note to end on for this week. I hope that you'll leave a comment and tell me what jumped out at you. As always, I hope you'll drop back by next Friday so we can see what happens with Opal next.